This is Talking Hardcore, the podcast for people who love hardcore history.
You study history because it allows us to understand the present and prepare for the future.
Yeah, it's like Shakespeare or Greek tragedy.
Could you imagine what was in the Library of Alexandria?
I bet it was porn.
I'm not even wearing pants right now, Scott.
What's the old Clint Eastwood line? A man's got to know his limitations. I know my limitations.
The Talking Hardcore podcast is presented by Ace Industrial Solutions. Are you in need of skilled trade professionals for your next project? Look no further.
Hey everybody, you're watching Talking Hardcore. I'm George.
I'm Scott.
And joining us is our
Matt.
co-host, Matt Bella, who just introduced himself.
Hello.
And we are re-recording this episode. We recorded it 2 weeks ago, and there was some kind of problem with the audio, so we had to redo it. So today we're going to talk about Addicted to Bondage, Hardcore History original episode Addicted to Bondage, which was from what was that, 2012?
It's a ways back, man.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was 2012. And then also wrapping that into that is the newer episode that came out a couple years ago called Human Resources, which was a 5-hour deep dive into slavery as well. So we're covering those two episodes today. And if you haven't listened to those, Addicted to Bondage is on his website, linked into the description. It's a brief... It's one of the older episodes, so it's only like an hour long, and it goes over basically winding. It's Dan's thoughts on slavery. Human Resources is more specific to the Atlantic slave trade.
Yep.
Okay, so both of them are fascinating and definitely worth a listen. And I'm sorry, Addicted to Bondage was in 2009, which shouldn't be that long ago, but when it's 16 fucking years ago.
Yeah.
Because we are so old. Holy shit. Okay, so Addicted to Bondage and then Human Resources. Those are fascinating episodes. Check it out. You can buy Addicted to Bondage from Dan's website. Human Resources is still free. So check those out and then come back and start listening to this conversation. Matt, you had some thoughts. We're going to let you jump in first.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say it's really fun revisiting these older episodes. I don't do it often enough. Like usually when I get into like a new topic or revisit more deeply a new an older topic, like Assyria, I'll find something in his older original episodes to help me augment that. Like Judgment at Nineveh is a good one for that. That was a lot of fun, and you folks did that one with him when you played Hardcore History Trivia with Dan. So, stuff like that. And there's definitely little gaps there that I need to go back and revisit. So this was just fun. Dan sounds so young. It's his only Addicted to Bondage is only his second Blitz episode. It was right after Punic Nightmares. It is a time warp, man. It's just really cool. So first, my impression from this, and he kind of leads with this, is that I get the feeling that Dan didn't just decide to make an episode about slavery, and that's what we got. It sounds like to me that he had a question in his mind, which was, are we inherently evil? And then he explored that thought through the institution of slavery.
Right. I think you're right. And it's a fascinating question. And I mean, I think I know the answer, but everybody's going to think they know the answer. But I don't think humans are inherently evil.
No, I don't think so either.
I think there are evil people, though. I think evil's real.
Oh, for sure.
Well, you say for sure, but there are people who don't think that.
Well, okay. Do you think Joseph Stalin thought he was evil?
No, but you don't. One of the requirements of evil is not to think you are evil.
Well, then there you go.
Right. Like you don't have to know you're evil to be evil.
Well, it doesn't matter whether you know it or not. If you are evil, you are evil.
Well,
how do you folks define evil?
See, but one second before Matt, hold that thought. That's a great question.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's like that. Okay. It's not you're evil or not evil. The action's evil. People have the capacity to do evil things. Sure. And people have the capacity to do great things. And sometimes a person has both of those capacities, right?
Sure.
That doesn't mean that they're not evil. If they do enough evil acts, you're evil. But a good person might do something evil, but not be an evil person.
Possible.
Like in the heat of battle, things happen in war, and I think we could all agree that there's a little bit of an extenuating circumstances there, and maybe an evil action is not necessarily a taint on that person's soul.
Yes.
Right.
That speaks to exactly the heart of my whole vibe for this episode. Scott, do you want to follow up on that?
No, I agree. I mean, but
yeah,
what I'm saying is like there's you're then there's levels or conditions for evil, right? So if you're on the battlefield and you commit a war crime or an atrocity, right? That's different than Joseph Stalin committing atrocity after atrocity after atrocity and
from the
completely violating all
office.
human rights and
absolutely, so, it's different. And also, there's a level of intention.
Oh,
that's
sure.
Exactly, dude. You just read from my notes. We are getting. This is great. Go, George.
So, if you look at the legal definition of murder, okay, it requires something called malice aforethought. Okay, it has to be intended.
Sure.
Okay, to qualify for murder, right?
Isn't that premeditation?
No.
Premeditation.
That's a different thing. Okay, those are, but
sounds similar.
It means intent.
Okay.
Okay, you have to have the intent to have actually committed the crime. If you kill somebody but without the intent, then it's not murder, even though it could be negligent homicide, it could be manslaughter, right? There's other things, but it's not murder, because we recognize that intent matters, which is tricky because it is very difficult to know intent of anybody.
Yeah.
Right? Like what somebody was thinking is difficult. So it is difficult to use that as a qualification for anything, but you still have to, because that's what makes somebody or somebody's actions evil. If you do something on a battlefield and you don't know that it was going to result in something awful happening, but it does, you dropped, you accidentally started a fire that burned down a village.
Sure.
Okay. That's not evil. Even if you were there to kill other people and your actions caused more death than you thought, it's not evil.
No, and the military, and they have,
but even if you take it out of the realm of military, I mean, just to put it in everyday life, right?
Then that's collateral damage if you're talking about battlefield issues.
Right. But
battlefield situation.
If you knowingly start that fire and burn down that orphanage, okay, you did it on purpose.
Well, then there's intent.
Then that's evil.
Yeah.
That's my point. So intention matters, and there are people whose actions speak loud enough that we can say they're an evil person. Right. And I know I just said that not necessarily that's the case, but I think it's important to realize that there are just straight up people whose intent is to be evil, even if they think they're not. And that makes me think of Matt's book that we talked about in the previous episode.
That's where I was going to go with it, because we talked about
that son of a bitch was evil.
What I learned, we talked about that, in that episode. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons for me writing to that person and engaging with them for so long and then publishing that and processing it through my own thoughts as I did so was to, learn more about the nature of evil. So, this is my little amateur work of sociology or whatever. And what I came up with from that and talking to him about that, what he thought, about it, and what I concluded was that my definition of evil is those who delight in the suffering of others. Okay, so delight, like intentionally enjoying it. And that I can tell you right now that the book that was the book, so a true crime author interviewed his final remaining victim, the final living victim, and it just came out. It's a long, very comprehensive and incredibly well written book. It's called Out of the Woods, and a ton more stuff came out about that dude. And I can tell you that I have no illusions, at all, if they ever
Right.
had any, about exactly what his intentions were and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
yeah, that's evil. And I want to talk about intention. That was actually in my notes. Because I want to raise the crazy question of if humans aren't inherently evil, is slavery inherently evil? Now that sounds bad. Bear with me, but let's
I don't
just
think it
go
sounds
through.
bad. That's a great question.
Okay, let's just go through the way that Dan presented it in Addicted to Bondage. The first thing that stood out to me in that episode was the reasons why ancient peoples would enslave other people. And now let's just be real clear about what the world looked like at that time. You had a bunch of what we would call barbarian tribes, but like, very much with their own culture and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And there were ancient historians who went around and reported back. They're like, these people have their own thing going on. We shouldn't call them barbarians. But, to the people like the Greeks, they were. And so when you went to war or captured people and brought them into the folds of your civilization and society, you were actually upping them a level in being civilized. And so Greeks, would enslave people as a benefit to them. Really, it's like you are receiving the benefit of our civilization. Yes, you have to work and all this kind of stuff, but we're doing you a favor. Now that's a way of justifying it to themselves for having cheap labor and all that kind of stuff. But I think that really is a benefit, and it really goes. And we can jump ahead to the Romans right here.
But let's talk about that. What you just said.
Okay, all right.
Okay, because this is something that he talks about in Addicted to Bondage.
Yeah.
And maybe Human Resources, but slavery is not inherently evil because in reality, it was better than the alternative.
In some cases.
The alternative
sometimes is death.
Well,
yeah.
Ancient people, you're talking about slaves the way they originally happened, right?
Yeah.
And I guess most of the time still do, is you lost a battle.
Yep.
Okay. And they would take the women and children and kill the men.
Yep.
And then they realized, well, if we keep the men, we can have them work and do shit that we don't want to do. So we don't need to kill them, which seems better. Okay. Depending on what they're having you do and all kinds of other things.
Yeah.
Sometimes death is more important, but sometimes death would be preferred over slavery. But there's always that chance of freedom and life that you don't have once you're dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so
either you play the waiting game.
What you're saying there, Matt, about the Greeks thinking about it, what they're doing, it is also true just in real life. I mean, like, not just in real life, sorry. I'm saying that wrong. But it is just undeniable that there are worse things than being a slave.
Yeah.
To some people anyway.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the topic of my thoughts on this are intention and consequences. And I want to take it all the way back to human prehistory, like you just did, George. And like Dan does, he says, exactly what you just said. Originally it was tribe versus tribe, you killed everybody. Okay, well what are the consequences of just killing everybody? Eventually there'll be no more people after the world, or be one tribe whose only culture dominates. I mean, that's an extreme example, but that would be the ultimate, eventuality of that. Now, the consequences of incorporating these disparate people into your society, which you are doing, you're taking people in, they're the house slave, they are going to influence your children or whatever, they're going to bring their skills and culture into yours. It's the mixing of cultures, and we see that all throughout history, right up until the civil rights movement, man. Like, it's still to this day. And I want to get there later on. I don't want to go there yet, but like, that is a huge thing that started way back in the day. So those are the consequences of it. And as far as up at like it not being so evil, Dan says that, Cato, the elder, the Stoic statesman in the Roman Republic, his side hustle was buying uneducated slaves, teaching them skills, and then selling them at a higher price. That greatly improved the quality of those people's lives.
Yep. Well, and back to your point, George, I mean, if you look at Genghis Khan, same thing. I mean, his whole conquest was kill everybody, and then go back a couple days later, and any survivors, kill them all, until finally some philosophers convinced him. Well, I think it was Chinese philosophers.
It wasn't that. It was kill everybody that fights back.
No, and then go back and kill everybody that survived.
But no, I'm saying if they surrendered, he didn't kill everybody. Right?
Yeah.
It was a very harsh type of winning. Okay.
What I'm saying, well, at the
Yeah.
end though, like even in Wrath of the Khans,
Yeah.
they say, well, listen, these people still have value. You don't have to kill them.
Right.
I mean, you could let them live and collect, taxes or
Right.
whatever you want to collect from them.
Right. Or get them to harvest crops.
Yeah.
But to him, that made no sense because you didn't have crops.
He didn't need crops.
You had pasture.
Yeah.
And that's what you wanted. It's funny you talk about Genghis Khan. I just listened to
Yeah,
Lex Friedman's interview.
I want to get into that too. Like I have that as a note later on, and Lex even references Dan during the episode and talking with that dude, and then he talks about human resources at the end when someone asked him a question. So it's perfect timing.
Yeah. So, like,
Who did Lex Friedman interview?
I'm looking up the name.
I'm looking up his name right now.
I got it.
Jamie, pull that up.
Jack Weatherford, who is an author that writes about the Mongols.
Yeah. God,
To
that
be
dude
fair,
knew a lot about the Mongols right off the top of his head. didn't he?
Fascinating. Fascinating
Great.
interview.
Everybody
well
go
worth
check it
the
out.
listen.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a Genghis apologist. A bit.
Well, what I learned from that episode was like how much civilization they spread and stuff, and I didn't really hear much about like I just want to kill these people and take their stuff. I guess that's fair.
Well, and he even admits that. He's like, well,
Yeah.
that's always what happens, so I'm going to focus on the things that are different.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But also, you can't talk so glowingly about somebody who killed that many people
Yeah.
without at least sometimes saying, oh, also he killed this many people.
Right.
Allegedly.
it just and listen, I don't judge people of the past by standards of today. I don't think that's a good idea in general. I mean, obviously there might be exceptions to that, but in general, I don't think that's a good idea.
They've actually coined a term for that.
What is it?
Presentism.
Presentism.
Oh,
That's a good one.
interesting. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember where I heard that, but yeah, that's what they call it, is looking at the past through the eyes of the present and then condemning, well, they should have known better.
So this author, though, his main source is the secret text of the Mongols, the secret history of the Mongols.
Yeah. Which is an
who's
audio
written
book
by
nowadays.
somebody who knew
Yeah.
Genghis and was raised in part
Yeah.
by Genghis. So okay,
And-
let's say that maybe a lot of that is true. But also I'm sure there's some bias shit in there.
Yeah.
Well,
And you want to like just a huge glossing over of all the women that Genghis took as his wife. Okay, like you say, he was great for women, but like how many women did he take as his wife after he killed their husband, and how willingly was that?
yeah.
Like we could be honest and have a discussion there. And this author kind of glosses over all that.
Well, and how many women did he rape? Because
Well,
what
that's
was the statistic?
see, but that's also a thing that he argues is
He
probably
does.
not true.
Lex brings up a paper that was recently published, and it like really, I think expands the numbers really of descendants
Mm-hmm.
of supposedly Genghis Khan, and then the guy pushes back against it. Is like, we can't prove that. You know what I mean? All this kind
I
of
mean,
stuff.
we know it's somebody from that area
Right.
that lived within 200 years of that time frame.
Yeah.
But for all you
yeah.
know, it's Genghis's dad
Well,
or
Yeah.
his uncle.
wasn't it
Right.
1 out of every 100
No, it's
supposedly direct descendants of
in that
Genghis Khan?
area. It's like 1 out of every 4
Jesus,
is a direct male descendant
that's
Yeah.
crazy.
of one person. They don't know if it was Genghis, and he's right to point out that there's no scientific evidence that that's Genghis.
Gotcha.
Right. And what he says is we have a very the Mongols have a very detailed list of everybody who Genghis begot.
Gotcha.
Right. Like, and maybe that's true. Or maybe in the secret history of the Mongols, they were glossing over a lot of the bastards. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It could be.
I haven't dived into as much as this guy, but he does. And he even admits that he's biased. So who knows? I'd love to talk to him. There's a fascinating listen. You should check it out.
I will.
Okay, but back to slavery.
Yes.
slavery.
Right. Right.
You
That
know,
was great. Oh, I wanted to dive into that because I just
Mhm.
finished that episode today, and it was really just very interesting, and I'm glad to put it out
Right.
there. So back to the intentions and consequences of slavery. Okay, so consequences. So Dan talks about how, why didn't the Romans colonize Mars, right? Why didn't they even have steam engines and stuff like that,
Mhm.
And there is literally a story from way back in the day in Roman times where, like, I think someone invented a basic steam engine, but then it was just overridden by slavery or something like that. So
because it was cheaper to just use
right,
manpower.
exactly, and that
Yep.
speaks to the vast richness that came with the conquering of Carthage, all that kind of stuff. And
But I
it's
mean-
like it's a sickness. It's a sickness. So what I see is like, okay, we had so Dan talks about slaves being biological machines. They absolutely are. Or, they replace
They're treated that way.
right. Well, they replace that function in our society, right? And so you lose the ingenuity that comes with developing those things for yourself, right? That can stymie an entire civilization. It really can.
Because
And
necessity is the mother of invention.
it really is.
So if
and
you can solve
right,
that necessity easier with, oh, here's this dude that I bought.
yep.
That's way easier than
Yeah.
engineering some practical thing. And that
Yeah.
might be why there's been such a revolution in human technology since slavery was basically eradicated in the West. And that's when you see so much more innovation. The
I wanted to get into
Industrial
that too.
Revolution
that's-
started a little
absolutely.
bit before slavery was outlawed, but in places where
Yeah.
slavery wasn't actually very much used, like in England, when the Industrial Revolution really took off, there wasn't a bunch of slaves in England, right? There was they participated in the slave trade, but they weren't actual slaves, right? But you really see another jump, especially here in America, once the end of the Civil War, right? You got a huge jump in innovation. And so I think that's a valid point that I never really thought of until I listened to Dan's episode. I was like, that's a fascinating thing to think about.
And immigration.
What do you mean?
Well, no, after the Civil War.
Right.
Innovation and immigration.
Right. But because you needed work, so there was a vacuum.
Yeah.
But people were immigrating here before that because of land.
Yep.
Right.
But I'm talking about,
Sure.
like the Irish,
Sure.
working on the railroads. The
Chinese, Irish,
Chinese, Irish, yep.
Yep. All of that.
So what do you do when you have the perfect system where all you got to do is put these slaves to work and they work your plantations and they're the human machines, and you got everything set up and the income rolls in, like it's a status quo, just maintain the status quo. How do you get more slaves? War. Okay, so then you're like investing you're a wealthy landowner, you might be a member of the Senate, you might be more inclined to vote to go to war with another country. So that's
Sure.
just perpetuating the big machine. We can see how all that happened.
Or you're Caesar and you go to Gaul and you
right, exactly.
take
So-
50,000 Gaul in one battle.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a stymieing of ingenuity. There is also a lassitude that comes with not knowing how to do your own stuff. You know what I mean? It's like very much a weakness. Okay. And then you are subject to the people who do know how to do it. We saw that after the Black Plague devastated 40% of Europe's population. Where all of a sudden the
Mhm.
serfs had the upper hand. You want us to go plow that field? Okay. We are going to set some new terms here. Frank
Because there's not
Herbert.
very many of us.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
or you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are you actually doing for us nowadays, right? So, like, Frank Herbert wrote about, guys know who Frank Herbert is? The author of Dune.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so actually, I want to go back when we were talking about in our celebration episode, and you asked me who my favorite Washingtonian is. I'm going that guy, Frank Herbert. But anyways, he's from Tacoma. But so he wrote about in his future there were no intelligent machines because we had already invented them, become way too lazy because of them, and then other people with machines conquered us. Okay, so that was eliminated. It was a universal law. Make no machine in the likeness of the human mind. He wrote that back in the 60s. You know what I mean? So like it's pretty prescient. So that's another effect that comes with having such an easy workforce. And we're seeing that nowadays. We're outsourcing. Okay, so I see two things here. I see the Industrial Revolution, as you said, George, as really being ingenuitive and like a bump up in hands-on knowing how to do things, practical experience and craftsmanship of humans. Like you said, and there was also that competition with the South during the Civil War, so that was a big deal. They're replacing slaves with machines, and we had all these innovators, all these inventors. Henry Ford comes out of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, would Henry Ford invented assembly line if he had slaves?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Not.
Exactly. No, we needed automation, and that improved conditions for workers, right?
Right.
The Industrial Revolution really made like inventors, and I admire inventors. Nowadays, we're outsourcing our thoughts, our creativity, you know what I mean, to machines. And that is, I think, bringing us back to that kind of lassitude.
But if we're doing it right, you're not outsourcing it. You're using it as a tool.
Yeah.
But
if you're doing it right, it's a tool.
But the one thing that I think you're right, it is a tool. But if you can just say, hey, whatever, if you can tell it to, if you can tell like Grok, okay, to give me all the information on X, Y, or Z, you didn't learn anything.
Well, that's not true. You can learn it from Grok.
Yeah, but that's
AI is going to be the best teacher.
Possibly.
It's going to.
Possibly.
The best affordable teacher.
Depends on
that's what it's going to be.
It's teaching you.
The best affordable teacher.
Programming what it's teaching you.
And that's why AI is super important to be open source and things like that. But let's not get into that conversation when we're supposed to be talking about slavery.
Yeah.
I would point out real quick, though, one thing. I listened to this programmer that Lex interviewed.
I want to hear that one.
He was talking about how he tried using AI to do some of the programming, and he got dumb really fast.
Yeah.
So he stopped. So he says he uses it, but not for any of the actual thought. Right.
That's my point. Is
the
machine, is AI working?
But he noticed right away and stopped. Machine, right. Right. That's what I'm saying. So the machine always works for you. It's never going to be, I don't believe it's ever going to be sentient. So the trick is just learning to use it just like the internet. Because what is AI right now? These large language models, what are they really? It's just a faster, better access to the internet.
Well, without you having to read.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. It's a better connection to the internet.
Yeah.
You still have to read what the AI says.
Well, the AI sometimes pulls shit from Wikipedia.
Yes.
And that's the problem.
And that's the point. But people sometimes pull shit from Wikipedia.
Well,
and in fact, Wikipedia is a great source for some stuff.
Well,
right. So that's the point.
Like in college, you're not allowed to use Wikipedia because anybody can write anything.
That's not true anymore.
It's not?
I bet it's not. I'll bet now Wikipedia is still cited as some sources. Okay, because it depends on the topic, right? Like I wanted to know something. I was listening to the Rest is History recent podcast about Mary Queen of Scots. Okay. And I wanted to look up some of the British royal family family tree stuff. Wikipedia is great for that because they're not making shit up for that.
Sure.
You don't have to worry about that.
Well, they could also say incorrect information.
Right. But anyway. Back to slavery.
Consequences.
Yes. So one of the main consequences of slavery is creating a society where you're living right with people who
that is the exact next note that I had. Having a wolf by the ear. Yep.
Yes, and Thomas Jefferson talked about that, and people don't give him enough credit.
And people in the Roman, there's a story from old Roman times where a Roman nobleman was walking down, went over to visit his friend for like lunch or whatever, and he said, "Oh my God, Flavius, I must tell you this story about what happened to me on the way here." And he said, "Go ahead, Gracchus," you know what I mean, whatever. And so he said, "Okay, well, I'm a bit flustered from this. Do you have some wine?" "Yes, please sit down." "Oh my God, what happened?" He said, "I was walking down the road and this man passed me by and he appeared to be well dressed. And I said hello to him as one does. And he said hello back. And it was only as he passed that I turned and realized that he was a slave. I have never been so mortified or embarrassed or ashamed of myself for lowering myself to his station. We should put a mark on these people so we can recognize them and not embarrass ourselves." And his friend said, "Oh my God, Gracchus. No, you don't want to do that. If we marked them, they would realize how much they outnumber us."
Yeah. Well, and that's even there was even some thoughts about that, like in the South, where
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Oh
where you're
yeah.
literally, or what I forgot when the slave trade in the Atlantic, and they said, well, there's so many of them, and only a few of us. Like, why don't?
That was on the Dan was talking about that in Human Resources, and he was on the island of Haiti,
Yeah, I think so.
where there was like literally one French family and then like 200 slaves.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how lonely it was and how awful it was to just wake up and be surrounded by people in such abject misery, but yet not releasing them from their misery because he probably couldn't.
What do you do in that situation? My first
mean-
instinct is like, if I took over that place, I would just go around and talk to people and be like, "What do you need? You know what I mean? Let me give you fucking something." You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
don't fucking kill me. You know what I mean? But like,
Well,
that's
that's the
probably not
trick,
how it was.
right?
Just wasn't how it was. It just wasn't how it was.
And maybe, well, I'm sure there were people that did that. I'm sure there were good people who tried to do the best they could to ease the burden of the slaves. In
Mhm.
fact, there are reports that that's like what George Washington was like. And who knows that that's true? But when he would go north to a free state, he would take some of his slaves knowing that they would not be able to come back
Yeah.
Yeah.
because he wasn't legally allowed to release them by Virginia
Yeah.
law. So he would knowingly let them go the best way he could.
Yeah.
Right? Like there were good people that tried to do their best to treat these people as though they are people. Even in the worst slavery systems, I'm sure that happened still. But it's important to remember, like, and this is something Dan talked about. It's like this is a human thing, and it's totally understandable. Like I understand the compulsion to want to have a slave if you lived in those societies.
Well, I mean, you don't even have to think about that, George. I mean, look at how many people would line up if a robot tomorrow.
I'd be the first person to buy one.
I mean, it'll do your dishes, it'll do your laundry, it'll
Sweet.
clean everything.
Yeah.
And you don't have to touch any of that. You don't have to do any of that menial labor anymore.
100%. It's a slave without the guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not going to turn on you.
Well, there's still
Which is probably why people have these Terminator 2 type thoughts, like it's going to turn on us, because there's always been slave revolts. But I don't. Anyway, we don't need to talk about why I think that's silly.
Why not?
I don't think the robots are ever going to do that because they're never going to be conscious. They're just going to be robots.
The only thing you have to worry about, George, is if that does happen, you have to understand that a robot, no matter how advanced, it can never feel actual compassion or empathy.
But it also can't feel malice.
No.
So that's what's pointless, because in your situation, the scenario you're arguing is,
I'm not arguing.
well, the scenario that this would contemplate is that these robots are mad because they're being forced to do all the menial labor. So then they revolt. Well, why would they be mad? They're not going to feel emotion.
Yeah.
That's the point. The only way it's going to feel, even if it becomes conscious, why would it have emotion? Right? Like we have emotions that are triggered from dopamine and other chemicals that we physically feel. Why would a robot ever have that? But a slave does, and that's why we recognize that that's wrong, right? Because they are a human, and that is different. It just is. And the same thing is different than an animal.
And that's what
You can own a donkey and make it pull a cart, and it's not evil because that donkey isn't a human with reason and emotions and complex feelings. That donkey is just a donkey because we're different than all other animals because our brains are so damn big.
Well, yeah, you're right. But one thing I do want to bring up is, what will happen? And okay. So if a robot can't feel empathy or malice or anything like that, it may also not be able to invent. So
creativity.
Yeah.
That's what, and maybe you're right.
Because
you're right.
Typically it can only follow the box that they typically can't think outside the box.
Okay.
Or will we stop inventing things because we're not going to see, just like slavery in the past, we're no longer going to see there's a problem because we're not going to be doing it.
I disagree.
Why?
I think that humans are are going to be even more creative.
But why give a
Do you want to know
robot-
why I think they're going to be more creative?
Hold on. Why give a robot a better tool when it's not you doing it?
Because you might not be, you're going to have, theoretically, there's going to be more time to be creative.
Maybe.
Because the robot is doing even more of your menial tasks than our
That's the thing.
machines
Yeah,
do now.
Slavery freed up a second class of people who were allowed the free time to come up with things like philosophy. You know what I mean? So
Right. You didn't have Marcus Aurelius without that. You didn't have Socrates.
It's absolutely correct.
Somebody like Socrates would have been too busy trying to farm.
Yeah.
Right.
Trying to feed himself or clean
right.
feed the chickens.
So, in fact, human innovation has increased because of human innovation. It just builds on itself.
But wouldn't you have thought, or wouldn't you think human innovation would have continued, would have grown during Grecian slavery, Roman slavery?
But it did. It did. Even what Dan's saying, okay, we didn't land on Mars, but the Romans still did a bunch of shit. And then what happened? Yes, slavery. Also, they got complacent because that's what happens in cultures. But right now, there are so many people. There's never been a time where there's been more human brains that are actually able to think about things and have access to information. So, in fact, if anything, the pace of innovation is probably going to increase because there's some dude in some backwoods county or country or state who has access to all the information in the whole fucking world.
Yeah.
With a Wi-Fi connection.
Well,
so he can teach himself. And then so this dude might see the need because he doesn't have a robot. He doesn't have a thing, and he might see this need, and then he can find out how to build it. And AI helps with that. Like I was using AI today to look up how to make my own app because I have an idea for an app.
Okay.
Right on a phone. And it's like it made me a sample app in like 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, like 10 seconds. Okay. Now that's way far away from what it would need to be, but like that is a force multiplier, right? So somebody can create the next Facebook or create the next amazing thing that changes the world using the AI to not need all the money that it would take, right? Like, because really, a lot of that shit's very expensive.
But then not know how to do that thing.
No, you don't need. Okay, you're thinking about that wrong. But we should get off of this topic soon.
Sorry.
You don't need to know how to do the thing as long as the computer knows how to do the thing. You just need to know what needs to be done, right?
Well, that's like
why do I
don't
need to know?
I don't need to know how to add because my calculator knows how to do it.
You need to know how to add because you go to a store, okay? But you don't need to know how to find the slope of a line, right? Like a lot of things that we learned are completely unnecessary because now you can just look it up super fast. Once you have a tool that does something, you let the tool do the thing.
Sure.
Right? You let the tool do the thing.
But then you
don't run around and shoot shit, throw rocks at stuff you want to kill and eat. You use the gun. Do you even know how to make a gun? No.
Well,
but that's the point. It doesn't matter because as a society, we know how to make the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
and it's a good idea.
To your point, it's funny like how a lot of people don't know how to do things. And even though they have all the information in the world on their phone or accessible to them,
right?
They don't know how to do a thing and they still call somebody to do it for them.
Yeah, because they value their time more than they value the money that they would pay to have somebody do it. And that's good because that creates jobs.
Maybe.
No, it's good. And it's good that there are people who fix stuff themselves. It's both of those things are good, right? It's good that there's people who make enough money that they can pay somebody to mow their lawn. And it's good that there's people who mow their own lawn. It's not bad that there are people who don't want to spend their time mowing their lawn. It's not lazy unless they aren't working and still don't mow their own lawn. Okay. But that seems unlikely because then how are they paying for that? So the point is, and it comes back to slavery, right? Like it's not the desire to not have to waste your time or spend your time on tasks that you don't want to spend your time on is not inherently lazy or evil, because you may be doing other more valuable things with that time, which is what slavery did allow for back in the day.
You just said the key word. Maybe.
Yeah, but now we all have these TVs and fucking distraction devices in our pocket, so it's very easy to waste your time.
Yeah.
So yeah, if robots come along and everybody has one, and instead of doing other things with that time that they free up, they just spend more time on their phone, that's not great, right? And there will be some people who do that, but there will be more, I hope, that are not doing that.
Laying around eating double stuffed Oreos all day.
God,
The way I
sounds
see it,
amazing.
like what AI is going to do for us, we're going to lay around eating double stuffed Oreos and being philosophers all day. Like,
Do
that's
you
my
know
dream
that
scenario.
double stuffed Oreos, that Oreos in general have no dairy in them?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I'm not surprised with that at all.
But that's why they get sent. But think about that, like that white cream. What the fuck is that stuff?
Sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like
Sugar and oil. That's
yeah.
all it is.
Yeah, not good. Anyway, okay, Matt, what else on slavery?
That was my notes for like those 2 episodes. I have a way of kind of collating them that I can kind of wrap it up with.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So way back when, so intentions and consequences. That's the vibe I kind of this kind of formatted in my head, and you came to it naturally, and we really fleshed that out. I think it's a really cool kind of synchronicity we had here with the thoughts. So intentions and consequences, like way back when we did our book club on a India and Apache Odyssey, again recommended by Dan for your podcast. I was frankly moaning about like the plight of the victims of the First Nation people who got killed by the Europeans coming in, and you cut right through that, George. You said, look, 2 warrior nations clashed, and one of them prevailed. And I was like, you're right, it happens all the time. So that if you give as good as you got, it's a fair fight. So the firearms, whatever, but whatever. So
it doesn't even need to be a fair fight.
Right.
It was just a fight.
It was warrior. Yeah, exactly. And it happens all the time.
Right.
So there was a massive reduction in population. Was this intentional? In some regions, yes. It was an actual, intentional reduction in population. When I think about genocide, I think about the Mongols, and which is when this is the point where I was going to bring up the Lex episode, but I'm glad we dived into it already because I can just move on. So when I think about this, I think about Genghis Khan wiping out an entire people. You know what I mean? And then the sorrow and misery and aftermath of that. And in our Discord, we were talking about the aftermath of the Second World War in Europe. And like how civilization had completely broken down and people were just wandering around bereft of any kind of central authority or resources. Think about that, you know what I mean? And that's okay. So we have the ability to feel one way or another about what happened to the First Nation people here because we're still like 140 years separated from the end of it, right? And there's like we're still living through it, and we're very kind to the people over whom we prevailed as white Europeans or whatever. So we're in the middle of it. So think of yourself 140 years after Genghis Khan conquered a region of the world. There'd only really be stories being passed down, and like Xenophon relates in Judgment in Nineveh, you come by the ruins of Nineveh 100 years later, and nobody has any idea, or 200 years later, nobody has any idea who lived there or what those places were. So that knowledge was probably immediately lost. We're preserving it very much, and there's cultural museums and all these, cultural movements and museums and very rightfully so, and all these people to preserve the heritage. So it's a very sore subject and it's right in our faces all the time. But these things happen, and as time passes on, there's a big picture to this, okay? And it's just a thing that happens. We're experiencing it in real time. So at that time, there was also an unintentional mass reduction in population, and that was caused by the plague of smallpox, okay? Now, the intention of all this was colonization. The consequences of that was an elimination of the actual workforce by the disease inadvertently. Like, these people eliminated the very people they wanted to work for them just by being there. They had no idea what was going to happen. So the solution to that was a transplantation of workers from Africa, which Dan talks about in Human Resources. And the
Mm-hmm.
consequences of that, let's fast forward way in the future, was
So
Jim
much.
Crow. Jim Crow, okay? That's a negative consequence. You know, now you
Mm-hmm.
you free the slaves, they're in your society. You can't have this wolf by the ear anymore, but you got to mitigate it somehow. You can't send them all back to Africa. You know, they're in your country. They don't like you. Let's separate them and denigrate them even more as a subclass. That's Jim Crow. It's a negative consequence. But a positive consequence of that is the American Civil Rights Movement, which is, I think, stands uniquely in the world as a standard by which nations around the world have rallied the cry of freedom. That's something we can always be proud of. Is the Americans? It took us a while to get there, and it was really hard, and we embarrassed ourselves and shamed ourselves along the way, but we did eventually find a way to, declare equality. You know what I mean? Another positive consequence of that is the mixing of these cultures together. We talked about that way back in human prehistory. It was happening, obviously, but Dan talks about it I think it's Human Resources, where it's maroonage. Maroonage it was called. It's like when slaves would run away and get involved with it, they get taken in by the natives around where they were at, the indigenous people around where they were at, like in Jamaica and stuff, and form these new little weird little subcultures that blossom, became their own things. That is an incredible thing that happened because of slavery, and it sucks that it had to happen, but it's how humans mix together and grow. That happened in America. Think about New Orleans. I mean,
Right.
That's jazz, right? There's a musician called Bella Fleck. He's Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, pretty famous musician, whatever. He's like a bass player.
Mm-hmm.
But like, he made a documentary about the banjo. And the banjo is actually an African origin instrument. It came over from
Right.
Africa with these people and developed. He made a documentary called Throw Down Your Heart, which is about the West African port where the slaves would finally be sent to America. And they knew that place. It was notorious. And they said, this is where you throw down your heart. And it starts there. That's where the banjo came to America. All these incredible things. So we have to think about that. There's intentions and consequences, and they spread out, and they're positive and negative. I don't see a real conclusion here. I don't think there's one to be drawn. It is just history and human nature.
Right. Nobody living that doesn't own a slave is responsible for the ancestors in their past who did, nor does any living person who is the descendant of a slave owe a debt from somebody whose ancestors may have owned slaves, because everybody's ancestors owned slaves and everybody's ancestors were slaves. That is part of the human condition, and the best thing we can do is acknowledge that, study it, talk about it, and then get over it.
Well, the only difference is proximity, like from the time. But
Sure.
like I saw somebody posted this, and it said, like, blaming a white person for slavery is like blaming a Japanese child for Pearl Harbor.
Right.
I mean,
That's a very good analogy, right? Like and that is more new than slavery was in America, right? So there are people that are hung up on what divides humans, okay? They're hung up on identity, and they're hung up on color or gender or any one of orientation or any one number of things. But the real answer is that we're all human. And if you spend your time focusing on what unites us, you're going to be much better off and much happier. And the world will be better.
That's why the aliens need to come down, George.
That only works until we beat them.
Yeah.
And then we're right back to fighting.
But that's just to be.
But I do think it's important to acknowledge that we have gotten better.
If we beat them.
Humans have gotten better.
That's the other.
Right? Like, there are places in the world where bad things like slavery and all kinds of shit in China happen.
Yeah. Oh.
But we are in a better place than we were in the 1800s.
Sure.
And think about where we are as a people compared to Genghis Khan. Now that author that we were talking about on Lex Freeman,
Yeah.
I think he honestly thinks that we would have been better off if we took more lessons from Genghis, and maybe there's some truth to that. But Western society, Western civilization has done a lot of great things, and I think it's important to recognize that, and you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe we would have been better off if we followed the Genghis's stance on things, but I don't think that's accurate either. I think we'd be in a worse.
Well, who knows?
I think it'd be more homogenous, and I think you'd have different. I think a lot of things that were invented wouldn't have been invented.
But he was making the point that Genghis, if a people submitted, would just let them be.
Sure.
As long as they were completely submitted.
And paid taxes.
Right. But
or homage.
Sure. And that's great. Right. As far as conquest goes, that's not bad. That's better than most conquestors, most conquerors. But there would have never been an end to war.
Yeah.
And there might never be an end to war. But there is this human desire in a large percentage of humans to not be conquered, to not be a subject of somebody and have no say.
And there's a large desire for humans to control other humans.
True.
There just is.
True.
Unfortunately.
Well, yeah, it's
to
just
impose your culture on others, right?
Not your will.
Not even that. There is a drive in human.
And some humans.
You can look at oligarchs. You can look at, I don't know. I mean, you can even look at people in the U.S. government today.
Yeah. I mean, that's just human nature. There are some humans. Humans are a species that is infinitely varied.
Sure.
There are some humans that have that desire to control. And there are some humans that have the desire to cooperate and build.
Sure.
And there are some that do both. That's human nature. But I think and we need to do another episode soon. I want to do that. In fact, I'm going to call out for the listeners here. We're looking for a book about Matt, what is his name? Wilberforce. The dude in England who started to really
right
move the needle on the anti-slavery movement. I think his name was Wilberforce.
William Wilberforce was a prominent British politician and philanthropist who is best known for his leadership in the movement to abolish the transatlantic slave trade and ultimately slavery itself in the British Empire.
So we are looking for a book recommendation about that gentleman, because I do think it's kind of a travesty that more people have not heard of his name. Britain spent millions and millions of dollars to end the slave trade. And a large part of it was because this guy led this movement. And I think it's something that we should learn. And I had never even heard of this guy until 2 months ago. And I follow a lot of history. I try to read a lot or listen to podcasts and audiobooks, but never even heard of him. So we're going to do an episode on that. So guys, go to the Hardcore History Discussion Discord and to the Talking Hardcore chat and throw a book recommendation if you have one about that gentleman. I would love to do a book club thing on him, or we're at least going to have a read. Will the three of us will read the book and then talk about it, because that's a fascinating subject to me. All right, let's wrap this up, guys. You ready to wrap it up, Scott?
Yeah, I was going to bring up something else, but it's all right.
Go ahead.
No. That's it. Long conversation.
Okay. Matt, you ready to wrap it up?
I have one real quick thing, and I think I just want to
go ahead.
Bring together intentions and consequences. Human resources, the episode is really important to me, not just because I'm fascinated with the subject of slavery, but I think about it, I read about it, I write about it. I want to know how a human is capable of owning and controlling another person, and also how a human is capable of submitting to that for so long. So I have written about it and stuff. But It's important to me because when I was writing Pax Humana, I was really stuck on a part of it. I wanted to do epigraphs, which are chapter headings, and they're supposed to be like these little excerpts from like, you know, fictional material or real material within that world or otherwise that you know, express what's going on in that chapter. And I've been working on this novel for 8 years. It's now 3 novels pretty much, or 2, whatever. But at the time, it was a 330,000 word novel, and I was ready to be done with it. But I didn't have any of those things. I almost gave them up. And right at that time, Human Resources came out. The main character of the book that I was writing is a professor of historical sociology. And I was like, okay, I need to know about this stuff. So I thought about just getting, you know, Sociology 101. But I thought I wouldn't have enough time to really learn it and process it and express it in my own way. And it would just sound like rote recitation. So I just decided to go with what I knew for writing the character in the story about like the world and sociology in general. And it worked for the story, but for writing these little epigraphs, the first one I wanted to have was an excerpt from a book that he wrote. So it's a fictional book in a fictional world, and it just really augments the world building. I was stuck on that for so long. Human Resources hit, and right in the middle of that, I heard Dan say something that inspired me. It allowed me to think my own thoughts about the subject, and it opened the floodgates to all the epigraphs, and they just poured out of me after that. It's really important to me, and I want to read the first one that I wrote.
Sure.
Okay. This is an excerpt from a book of historical sociology that's written by a fictional character in my novel Pax Humana, and it really just kind of brings together the themes of intention and consequence with colonization, slavery, and the permutations thereof. So, the most destructive function of a foreign contaminant, such as a disease, when introduced into a system, is not that of the result produced in a contaminated individual. As an epidemic or pandemic entity, a disease is a destroyer of societies and even entire civilizations. This we saw in the accidental genocide preceding the conquest of the Americas by Columbus and his successors. 80 to 90% of all Aboriginal people were killed by disease, erasing ancient cultures along with untold sociological history and wisdom. A tide of death that swept out before the conquerors, unseen, unchallengeable, requiring no energy or expenditure of resources at all to inflict its destruction. A microscopic germ was the agent that opened the gates of the castle for these invaders, clearing the path for a seemingly easy occupation. The necessity of replacing these Aboriginal victims with human resources that were resistant to such diseases led to the intercontinental transplantation of cultures, developing new societies whose permutations remain significant in the world today. Given the nature of the contaminant and the dearth of scientific knowledge at the time, this cataclysm would have occurred even if the newcomers to these shores were the newcomers to the shores of these primeval lands had arrived seeking only peaceful coexistence.
Right. And there's another interesting way to think about this. Okay, I got to say this, and then we got to stop because we got to end this. But
we don't have to.
What you talk about there, Matt, contaminants, that could be more than just disease.
Yeah.
Or slaves.
That's what
ideas.
That's what it. Oh, wow, interesting.
If you look at our culture now, and you look at where we're at as a society, there are a lot of ideas. I mean, what is communism except a mind virus?
Sure.
Right? What is wokeism except a mind virus that spreads and does no good and doesn't only harm, but yet it spreads like a disease.
And both of those groups would say, what is religion other than a mind virus?
And I would argue that good religions are ways for ancient or ways that humans learned to live fulfilling lives. They learned to live fulfilling lives, and the tricks to help them do that. That's the good religions.
Well, I'm not saying.
No, I know, but that's the answer to your
telling
question.
you what they would say.
That's the answer to what you. Yeah, that's the rebuttal. Because I used to think more negatively about religion too. And it's funny. There's this scientist, this biologist who posts on X, and he literally posted something the other day that I've thought a bunch of times. But he posted, he's an atheist, and he used to be really hardcore about trying to talk people into atheism. And then he saw what happens. The woke movement made him realize that evangelizing atheism was a terrible idea as well, because there are just people who need religion.
Yep.
And if they don't find it in a book from the ancients, they'll find it somewhere. And there's no guarantees that whatever they find now is better than whatever we had before. And oftentimes it isn't.
People have to have.
Not people. Some people.
Some people
The-
have to have a purpose or something to fight for, or an injustice to it. They have to have something.
yeah,
Something
I have.
to grasp onto.
Mhm.
Yep. That's funny you mentioned political and religious mind viruses, because I have the perfect thing for that. That's another epigraph. Can I just read this in my closing?
Sure.
Okay. The injection of patriotic propaganda or religious dogma into a person's life is the most effective means of controlling a society. These are the systems which require the least effort to maintain, as they contain within themselves the laws by which the society functions. The motivation of the proud conscript and the pacification of the pious serf exist equally in each system. Moreover, they become so personal to the individual that they are self-enforced and passed down as traditions from one generation to the next. This is the genius of the political religious virus, a sociological organism that has evolved to perfection over thousands of years and, if properly implemented, needs no great amount of tending. To be truly effective, this must start in youth, shaping the individual's view of the world, funneling philosophies and scientific facts into a narrow channel of interpretation. These early indoctrinations are difficult to break, and the combination of patriotism and religion in a unified system is the most powerful psychological means of governance. The entire world is represented by this belief system. It is every reason to kill and every reason to reproduce. Moreover, the figure at the top is trusted completely as being the embodiment of both God and country. This trust is necessary to receive the lessons which shape the soul.
And as soon as you say that, Matt, 4 countries just jump right out at me that are currently in that, roughly in that same realm, like North Korea, North Korea, the Soviet Union, well, the former Soviet Union, the CCP. I mean, they just jump right out at me.
Yeah, but what Matt's talking about there is not just those countries.
No, I know, but if you look at, and I meant to ask you guys, what the hell was when Mao took over China, and they were publicly shaming people
when he won the Civil War,
yeah,
and then started the Cultural Revolution.
What were those people like? What there was a name for them, like the red coats or red shirts or something. I think the brown coats were for
Germany,
but it was something like that. I think it was like the red shirts or red coats or something. And they would literally go and just shame people, put hats on them, and if they
it was young people,
sure,
that were doing it to anybody that was considered to be scholarly,
old world thinking, old policy,
professors,
Red guards,
red cards,
red guards.
Red guards. Okay. Yeah, I remember that.
The Red Guards were primarily composed of enthusiastic middle school and university students who saw themselves as devoted followers of Mao.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's it's
infected with a mind virus.
But you can have those swings, but then George, the other thing that I don't want is the swing too far to, authoritarianism. Like if you think of like the society in Starship Troopers.
Yeah, but what was Mao except authoritarian?
No, I know.
Right.
But you get my point. Like,
because it's a horseshoe theory. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's right or left. If you go too far to the ends, you would just end up with authoritarianism, fascism.
Sure.
communism, fascism, same thing. There's really no difference in practice between communism and fascism. It's very stupid that we sit here and spend all this time trying to pretend like they're different.
Yeah.
When the outcomes
Are the same.
are the same.
But yeah.
So
Nazi Germany, same thing.
but the thing that matters here is that while what Matt read, and that is true, that is a very cynical way to look at it. You could look at it as ancestors trying to pass on the ways to have a happy life
Sure.
to their children and grandchildren. Because if they don't have something that gives them meaning, they might be miserable or they might turn to bad things, as you see happening all the time. The rise in mental illness, the rise in depression and anxiety coincides very much with the decline in religion. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that.
Sure.
I don't think it's just
Sure.
I don't think it's just the decline in religion.
Sure.
I think it's also decline in having real problems.
Yes.
And then people not taking ownership of solving those problems.
Sure. But if you are very religious and you have a good religion, you don't suffer from that anxiety and those depression because you're focused on whatever it is your good religion is tell you to focus on, which is not problems and victimhood or any of that shit, right? Good religions that benefit the people who follow them teach those people how to find acceptance or happiness in whatever they need to do, right? That's what the good religions do. So it's like, if you are really Christian and you really believe, you're not going to have depression and anxiety about, small ass little problems, because you understand that you're supposed to be working to do the good things that Jesus wants you to do, right? Like, and it goes to any good religion, right? And it's okay to admit that there are religions that are bad and there are religions that are good. Just like there are economic policies that are bad and good. That's the way it is. Humans are just as capable of creating bad things as they are good things. But this has nothing to do with the topic, so we should probably wrap that up.
I have to throw one thing, and I'm done.
Okay.
So, I had a conversation with somebody we both know, Pete D, about economic slavery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. And what he told me, and I described I described my point to him, and he said, "Scott, you're phrasing it wrong. It's debt slavery.
That's still wrong.
It's not economic slavery.
I don't think
it's
we argued about this when we pre-recorded the last one.
Yeah,
and then
I
we lost it.
I wanted to support
feel
Scott
like
on
this
that.
is a terrible analogy.
It's really not.
Slavery is the inability to control your decisions. Debt slavery is not that.
It
It's
kind of
not
is.
good. It's not anything. If you made the decision to get in debt and lost the ability,
You don't
that
always
means
make the
prisons-
decision to get in
that
debt,
means
dude. You can
prisons
set
are
up a
slavery
system.
too.
You
Yes,
can set up
Matt, of course, but in general, that's like saying, the person who commits the crime doesn't always have the responsibility for that. It's the same thing.
I don't think so.
then
I think
prisons
there's
are slavery
elements.
too.
Well,
I
hold
think
on.
there's factors in a society that
So
can
then
set a
kids
person
are
up to
slaves
guide
too.
them down a path
on.
to debt slavery. I want to support Scott in this. I was thinking about this today. I thought that it would be like last time we talked about this for a long time, but I
Right.
really think there's some good points here, and I'm with Scott that I think that debt slavery is legit. Now that's what Dan talks about with like slavery on a sliding scale, but it's worthy of being addressed.
It's something to talk about. I don't like calling it slavery. I feel like
Well,
that's wrong.
Indentured
Because-
servitude.
It's
Well, I would say that's student loans. Now, you indentured servants willingly signed up for that.
Yes.
To get and
Yeah.
I think college students that take out massive loans are doing the exact same
right.
thing.
And we could try to fix that system, but we can't call everything that's not perfect slavery.
Well, okay, but
People have agency.
you're right.
I think that it's a difference between not being not perfect and being intentionally designed to.
There
yoke
are
someone.
societies
Yoke
where
yoke
that is
someone.
a thing. Yes,
Yeah.
Matt, and we talked about that when we were recording last
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Like if it's if it's where they are tricking you into falling into their debt in a heavy thing, there's some it's illegal. It should be illegal. There are fraud that's committed there. That's not good. Okay. There's a difference between a slave and somebody who makes their own decisions.
Sure, but sometimes you have to make decisions to survive.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and you have to go into debt to survive.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Maybe.
credit card companies, I mean, and it's you are.
Yeah, but none of
Hold
that is
on.
relevant to American society now because you could just declare bankruptcy.
Yeah, and then you're screwed for the rest of your
you're
life,
not
and you
screwed.
can't get
You just can't. There's so many people that declare bankruptcy
you
that
can't
it's
get a
not
home
that big a
loan,
deal.
you can't get a car loan, you
But
can't.
houses aren't even affordable anyway. So what do you need a home loan for? You know what
There
I'm
you
saying?
go.
You put yourself into situations because life.
There are
happens.
not debt slaves in America.
Bullshit.
There are not
Yeah,
debt
I'm
slaves in
fully
America.
100% with Scott on this one.
I disagree with
Okay, tell me one person
No,
that's a debt slave in America.
We should
Anybody with a credit card debt of over $5,000.
That is not that is the dumbest thing you've ever said.
No, it's not. No,
that
it's
is
not.
dumb as you said
Hold on.
Abraham Lincoln
Let me
in that
explain.
first
That
episode.
was terrible.
This goes down as the
Hold on.
dumbest thing
Hold
that you've said.
At 20,
No.
At 25
Oh,
or
no.
28%
No.
interest.
No, that is so
No,
stupid.
George.
Scott,
I-
retract your statement. You cannot let that sit. That is so dumb.
There is.
You are too smart to say
hold
something
on.
this stupid.
Hold on. There is no way. Like for the common person, for the common household, once you get into a certain amount of debt,
$5,000 is nothing.
yeah, at 20-some%.
You don't know what the interest rates are. You just said $5,000.
Oh, sure.
You don't even know what the interest rates are. But
Let's
for
just-
that,
let's
what a dumb statement. $5,000 of
Let's
credit
go
card debt.
25%. I've
That's-
seen credit cards that were 28%.
Right. But most of the people who get a $5,000 limit don't even get a credit card with won't get a rate for that. The rates wouldn't be that high.
So
The rates that are 28%, those are probably like $500 limit credit cards.
well, I have one. It's 2,500. I don't use it. But my point is,
That was so stupid.
no, it's not.
I can poke so many holes in what you just said.
George.
Scott, give a better example.
All right.
Give a better example of somebody in the current America that is a debt slave, that literally has to work to pay off their debt, and it's so bad that it's slavery. Slavery.
Well, where they have no choice.
So no, because the real answer is those are places where you had like mining towns where they sold you, but that doesn't happen anymore.
No.
So you can't come up with one of those.
Well, it doesn't happen anymore here in the U.S.
That's what I'm saying.
But there are
so
also,
give me an example
but wait a
here
minute.
and now.
There are also people, and you know, a lot of people. There are also people in smaller cities that never leave that city because they can't afford it.
That is not slavery. That is just life.
Well, then they're just stuck
You can't.
working at
You
the
can't
local
call
Snoco.
everything slavery.
I'm not calling it slavery.
There's agency.
I'm not calling
That
everything
person
slavery.
thinks they can't afford it, but there are people who came to this country with $1.
I'm not calling
$1.
Sure.
Okay.
And a network of who?
Maybe none. A lot of people came here with nothing, and they still figured it out. So don't say that person has no choice and is equivalent to a slave. That is a stupid talking point that you are smarter
It is
than.
a part of a system of the system that
You sound just like
you
Josh
just can't-
Dwyer.
You just no.
He posted some dumb shit on Twitter this week.
There's
by the
some
way.
stuff you just can't get out of.
Yeah.
Okay. The only debt that's not dischargeable in America right now is student loan
loans.
debt.
Well, because you've signed
And you
up
know
to be
what?
an
They
indentured
don't put
servant.
you in jail for not paying student loan debt. So what are they really going to do? It just keeps racking up and you don't pay it. What are they going to do? They're going to garnish your tax returns?
Or
What do you go to jail for not paying your student loans?
No.
No.
Or you have
No.
a house.
So what are
then
the
you have to-
consequences?
Or you have a house. You have credit card debt.
You could get
You had a
foreclosed
car
on.
loan. They foreclose. They repo your car.
Right, which is fair.
Hold on.
If you can't pay the thing that you signed up to pay, why should you get to keep the thing?
They repo your car so you can't get to work. And then you're hurting for money, and then you can't pay your mortgage. And then you max out your credit cards to survive. And then
Those
there's
are
no way to
extenuating
get-
circumstances. That doesn't make you a slave. because you can work your way out of that.
But
You
you-
can do all kinds of different
you can,
things.
but-
You're talking about a calamity. That doesn't make you a slave to who? If you're a slave, who owns you?
At this point,
This is
whoever
why you have this you have this
the creditor owns you.
No, because the creditor doesn't demand you work. The creditor doesn't tell you where to work.
No, they
That's
dem-
when you
they
that's where
demand
you have
pay.
Of course, you signed up to pay.
I understand.
That's not slavery.
Okay, so let me ask you.
Come on, man. Like, this is not hard. Now, what Matt was talking about in those mining towns and stuff like that, that can be debt slavery. And places where that's happening, where they are literally doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not all slavery
we-
was initiated by conquest. A lot of American
they were tricked
people
into it. Yeah.
signed up.
Yeah.
That you just proved
That's
Scott's
different.
point right there.
But the point is, but that's not Scott's point. Scott's talking about fucking credit card debt.
No.
That's not debt slavery.
Okay.
Because you just don't pay. We
Yeah.
don't even lock people up for not paying anymore.
Well,
So what are you talking about?
well, then you have no house and you have no car, and then what are you going to do?
Whatever you want.
Then
You can get a tent and go sleep in the national parks. You can sleep on your mom's couch till you get a better job, until you make a better way. Shit happens. You have agency when you take on that debt.
I'm not saying you don't.
Not all credit cards are fraudulent. Not all credit card companies are fraudulently tricking people into spending money they don't have.
But there's sometimes you get into positions. where
Yes, but what does that have to do with this conversation?
That's how it happens.
No,
That-
that's not a slave.
That
That's a slave. You know how it becomes a slave? If you sign away, if somebody tricks you into, okay, now that I've got you in my debt, now you have to do everything I tell you.
Well-
Okay, and you don't. That is not happening here.
but then once,
So what you're talking about has nothing to do with debt slavery.
but once you get into that,
You're using some ephemeral slavery. Now, slavery is when you can't decide your own decisions. Somebody makes the choices for you.
okay.
So
That's not what
you-
happens here.
so you,
What you're
you
talking about, your example,
are
that's not it.
married with children.
You made those
and-
decisions. You made those decisions.
To be married.
I
and
mean,
have
I
You
think
made
you're,
those
I
decisions.
think hindsight is allowing a lot more
Okay,
of
you're
a
not wrong
broad
there, Matt.
a broad
But
view
it doesn't make you a
of
slave if
choices.
you've made bad choices in your history.
Well, there's
It
plenty of
just
slaves
doesn't
who
make
made
you a
bad
slave.
choices.
Yeah, they lost a battle, but then they had to live
Not
the rest of
necessarily
their
only
life.
that.
Yeah,
Not
I know,
necessarily that.
but that's my point. That's
North
the
Carolina coal miners made a decision to protect their families by
Right.
signing up for a job, and then are absolutely screwed by the mining companies.
difference. Right. And then what did they do? They fought back. And then what did
They
we
did
do
fight
in this
back.
country? What did we do in this country? We made laws against those
Battle
kind
of Blair
of
Mountain,
predatory behaviors. We learned
Well,
from that.
are we fighting back as a unified society, or against the kind of debt about which you and Scott are speaking right now? I mean, is there any kind of a movement against predatory creditor
We have
practices?
laws on the
We have-
books. If creditors do bad things, you can sue them. If they
But
call
what
you too
about
much,
what about the
if
system?
they call you too
what ab-
much,
what
Matt,
about-
you can sue them. Did you know
Hmm.
that? You can, and you can
What-
win.
What
Like-
about the system that makes that the only viable
That's not-
option in the
That's
first
not a
place?
system. That's just life.
Well, I just think it's.
I don't
interesting.
think so. I think removing. How long has credit been around for? A long time, right? That's
Oh.
it's a way of indenturing
Long
someone
time.
to you.
Well, what I
No,
find, what I find,
no.
It absolutely
See, you're
is.
seeing the negative aspects of credit, but there's no great things that have gotten built without credit either. We don't do amazing things
Julius
without
Caesar's
credit.
entire career was built on credit. So yeah,
Right.
that's a good
what
point
I
for you.
think's
Right.
Interesting.
The
is
Empire State Building,
The
all of that
Empire-
shit.
put Al
Empire
Capone-
State Building is built on credit.
I'm sure the person who built that borrowed money to do it.
Oh yeah.
Fact
Nobody
check.
pays for that.
Go
I
ahead.
guarantee that.
But I mean, like
But what I think's funny, George, is
all
they
Silicon Valley companies.
put, and I understand this is not really the best analogy here, but you're
So
gonna have
Scott's
just go
about
with
to
it.
say something else crazy.
Now, like Al Capone, all right, they put him in prison for what, 21% interest rates, but we have credit card companies that charge more than that now.
Yeah, the difference is that like when you're like funding a Silicon Valley startup or the Empire State Building, which I'm seeing was primarily financed by John J. Raskob, Pierre S. DuPont, and Empire State Incorporated, you have an expectation of like greatly recouping your investment. But like when you are praying, and I will,
Yeah, but the person who borrowed the money
firmly use the word praying on a low income, lower middle class, family household who can only eke out their minimum payment, which will keep them paying
How do you
forever.
know that? How do you
that
know that?
is a system by which you are indenturing someone to you.
How does the credit card company know that that's the truth about you? What do they fucking
ask
know?
your income up front.
Right.
Yeah,
and then they know that you're responsible for making your own goddamn decisions.
Yeah, but
guys,
wait.
Agency. This is America. We believe in freedom. If you want to spend yourself into fucking debt, go for it.
When I got my first credit card from Capital One, it was a $2,000 limit. I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whiskey and whores.
28% interest. 28%. And I asked them, I'm like, why? And they said, well, you're high risk.
Sure.
So that's why we give you a low limit and an insanely high.
$2,000 is not a low limit.
Well, I thought that was pretty low.
That's not a low limit.
It's not a low limit.
No.
Okay. Well,
my first credit card was like $200.
Okay, so then you max that shit out and you owe them $228.
Right, and then didn't you learn a valuable lesson?
Yeah, it was a bitch to dig out of that hole.
Right, and you learned a valuable lesson because you made a decision, and then you learned from it.
But okay.
But nobody makes you take that fucking money.
Wait a minute. Do you know what I spent when I maxed that credit card out on?
Don't care.
Really?
It's not relevant to the conversation
it is
at all.
Relevant.
It's not even a little.
I had to pay for tuition for school.
Sure. Because you didn't go through the process of getting financial aid.
I didn't qualify.
Right, because your dad messed up on the forms.
Because you're Mexican.
Oh.
Yeah, because they're racist.
No.
Because he didn't know he was Mexican at the time, Matt. That's really what it is. If he'd have checked Mexican instead of Spanish, you would have got plenty of aid. Exactly.
So you vote Democrat, people. Vote Democrat.
No. Let me explain this to you, George.
You checked white instead of Mexican.
Listen, there is no Mexican. It's white Hispanic.
And you didn't check Hispanic?
Hispanic. White
Yeah.
Hispanic.
I'm sorry, Scott. You are called Latin X.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Fucking
right.
bigot.
So,
fucking bigot.
God.
This is so off.
On the FAFSA form, it was great. Your dad makes too much money, and you made too much money. I made $17,000 my senior year of high school, and they were like, "Well, you don't need help." That's literally what they said.
I feel like you did that wrong, and if you had a good counselor at the school, they would have had no problem getting you financial aid.
They said
because it's very easy.
They said your dad makes X, so you don't apply for all these. You made X, so you don't apply for all these. The only one you can get is government unsubsidized loans.
Right. So you could have got a loan. It was less than 28% for the credit card.
At fucking 12%.
But then you got it on a credit card for 28%.
Well, that was just to pay for one semester.
Right. So that your whole analogy makes no sense.
So then I was working my ass off and going to school.
Right, which is good for you.
Sure.
Look at your work ethic now.
Well, I had a good work ethic before that.
The point is, people have agency.
I don't disagree.
You do.
But
your whole argument is saying, no, they are debt slaves.
I don't.
By your analogy, anybody with a goddamn mortgage is a debt slave.
Kind of.
Because mortgage is worse than a fucking credit card.
But at least
20 years.
It's 30 fucking years.
Yeah.
Like, that's stupid.
And life happens, and most people never pay off their mortgage.
That's not true.
Most people don't. They refinance.
Or they sell the house.
But
they pay it off when they sell it. Well, most mortgages get paid off.
Just to go get another mortgage.
But then they pay that off and live in that house till they go to a nursing home.
Possibly.
Like the people who buy houses, that's what happens. What else do you think happens?
What do you mean? You
just keep refinancing and you have a mortgage till you die?
Some people do.
Yeah, that's not common. Doing all these probate, I've done tons of probate and stuff like that. Most of the time, the houses are paid off. Unless somebody dies young. Old people, they have their house paid off.
Are we old?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm talking about people, like elderly people. Because of 30 years, right? And now you refinance, but you also make more money. You pay it off. Like, dude, that's not slavery. Words have meaning.
But you don't.
Words have meaning.
But there's okay.
God, this pisses me off.
Just hear me out.
Jesus fucking Christ.
There are things.
I was actually going
You
to try
have
and
to
avoid
have.
this topic, but I wanted to cover this, but I knew it would go on for a long time.
There are things
You brought it
have
up right at the end just to fuck us,
in
Matt.
this society.
I-
There are
did I?
things you have to have
He did.
to be functional
No,
for it to work.
no,
There are things you have to have.
no, no. That's your thoughts. But lots of people don't ascribe to that. There's people who bust their ass and live on somebody's couch while they're starting a company. Okay, and don't have a car and don't have a house or any of that. There are people, and that's not me. Listen, I borrow money like crazy. I don't fucking care. But I tell you, there's not anybody who's felt like less of a slave than me. And I have debt. I don't care. It doesn't affect the way I think. It doesn't affect my actions at all. All right. So that's why that's stupid. Because I know that no matter what, I'm not going to jail for any of that. I'm not fucked.
You could be homeless.
There's different
Even
ways.
then, I have enough family and friends
being
that
fucked.
me and the kids are not going to be homeless. If shit went sideways, we wouldn't be homeless.
Yeah.
Right? There's a support system. So I am not a slave. There's no gun to my head that says you must do this all the time. It's just not. That's
there's
just wrong.
There's castes of society that tell people how to behave, and slaves didn't always have guns or swords held to their bodies.
Sure.
Well, and it's funny.
Sure.
You talk about, you can declare bankruptcy. That costs money too. And when you're fucking broke,
And it
You
lowers you to a certain caste.
It's a
My
lot
buddy,
easier to do it now than it used
friend
to
of
be
mine
because
just
you can
declared
go
ba-
online and figure out how to do it for pretty fucking cheap.
a friend of
you
mine
don't
just
even need
declared
an attorney.
bankruptcy, and his options are now limited as a person. Like all of his credit lines are gone
For a
all
few
those-
years.
7.
Yeah,
But why the
it's
hell?
hard.
Why the hell shouldn't it be?
Well, I agree. I'm
Yeah,
not.
you failed
You
hard.
guys make it sound like everybody who lends money is evil.
No,
No,
I'm not saying
I'm
that.
not saying that.
I don't think Matt or I are saying.
You are.
I'm not saying
You
people
are.
that lend money.
No,
I
anybody
would
with a
say
credit card debt over
that they're-
$5,000 is a slave. Well, who owns that slave, Scott?
Well,
There's somebody that's a slave owner. So that means you think
you're
everybody
kind of-
who owes that has a debtor that owes them $5,000 or more is a slave owner
on a credit card. There's a difference.
or a mortgage. So all banks are slave owners.
No, because mortgages are lower interest
Yeah, but
rates.
you look at over the time period, you see how much you're paying
Sure.
at a 6% loan.
Oh, I know.
You're
it's
paying
disgusting.
3 times the amount of the house.
I understand that's disgusting.
So if you buy a $400,000 house, you're gonna pay over $1 million.
I know. I think that's
So then the bank's a slave owner.
kind of.
Yeah, because you had
Yeah,
to
kind
take
of.
out that loan. You had no choice.
You didn't have to,
Yeah, exactly.
but
You didn't have to.
But
You
hey,
chose to. You could have rented.
you're
If you
gonna
want a
You
certain
could've
quality of
rented.
life, you do,
No, you could have rented. You could have
Okay.
rented a nice house.
and then you're
And
throwing
then-
your money away forever.
See,
There you
that's
go.
the way you think of it. That's the way you think of it.
That's the way.
You
That's the way it
You're
is.
not accruing value for, dude. I've lived in my house
Anything.
for
So
3
you
years.
should pay for that
I-
ability to do that.
like,
If you're going to borrow money,
$50,000.
it's not going to be fucking free.
So wait a minute.
You don't believe in the free market setting rates.
Wait a minute. You think credit card companies is the free market setting rates?
Listen, if the market wouldn't allow for if nobody would sign up for the cards with the high rates, then they wouldn't be there.
Well, they once again
So
they don't have a.
so socialist
if-
says what?
No, this isn't a
Socialist
socialism.
says what?
I'm just saying, if you're willing to loan high risk people money,
You're doing them a favor. You're loaning them money. You're taking a risk.
you are taking a risk.
Now you're taking away their responsibility for their own actions because you think they're going to be stupid with that money.
I'm sure they will.
All right, guys,
But
we
that's
have an
pretty-
entire other episode to record tonight.
Yeah, I don't
So-
think we're going to do
Yeah, yeah.
that. It's getting too late.
Are you sure? All right.
All right, but yeah, we need to wrap this up. Scott's wrong. I'm right. Okay. Everybody, thanks for listening. If you think that all credit card lenders and mortgage lenders are really just slave owners, go to the discussion and
Which is-
say Scott's right.
Well, that's why I said economic slavery.
Which is not
That's
what we were
stupid.
talking about, but if
But
you want to raise it, yeah.
Scott thinks all
I don't
creditors
think
are
all creditors
slave owners.
slave owners. I just think you just get yourself.
yes, but that's not slavery. It's just bad luck, bad choices, bad luck, bad anything. but not everything has to be slavery, just like not everything is genocide. Words have fucking
And
meanings.
not everything's racism.
And not everything's racism. So don't fall into that trap.
I'm not.
You're falling into that trap.
I just
All right, guys. Thanks for listening.
have a good night.
Go on the
Have a good
Discord
night.
and say
Thank
Scott's
you.
wrong, please. All right, everybody.
George is wrong.
Peace out.